Hello. Today we're going to be talking about the growth of regional treasury centers in Asia. Let me introduce our panel of experts for you today from Citi Treasury and Trade Solutions. Anita Loh is the head of our Singapore product management team. Melvin Loh is ASEAN and Singapore country head. And Sandeep Patil is the Asia Pacific regional head for liquidity and investment management services. So Sandeep, let me start with you and ask you a few questions. How are treasury centers creating value for their company's business model?
I think we are here in Asia, and Asia is all about growth. If you look at Asia, 3.5 billion people with rising disposable income. So clearly, growth is the prime driver for businesses in Asia across each and every industry, each and every company within that industry. That's the space corporates in Asia occupy. But by the same token, if you look at the environment right now, there is a lot of uncertainty in rates, currencies, commodities. There's a lot of volatility. And this space is evolving extremely rapidly. So growth that we talk about is not easy to deliver. And treasury centers play a fundamental role in enabling that growth. They are at the front and center of growth strategy of practically every company, delivering that particular aspiration and ambition that a corporation has to deliver growth in Asia. So that's the role treasury centers play in Asia.
So how has the landscape for treasury centers in Asia been evolving?
That's a very good, sorry, go ahead.
Do you see any trends?
Absolutely. There are two aspects we need to understand. One aspect is what role in particular are the treasury centers playing? Then we'll be able to understand what landscape is it evolving into. So if you look at any particular treasury centers, there are three domains in which a treasury center is adding value. First is funding efficiency. The corporates in Asia, the customers in Asia, as you go across 15 to 20 different markets, over a period of time, we evolve into number of companies, manufacturing companies, sourcing companies, re-invoicing centers, etc., etc. And over a period of time, we end up establishing lots of fragmented pockets. Delivering funding efficiency is the primary goal of a treasury centers in terms of optimizing return on capital, making sure that the liquidity is there at the right place at the right time in the right currency, making sure that the banking costs come down, the business expenses come down, and the risk KPIs continue to improve. That's the funding efficiency paradigm. Associated with that is a paradigm to navigate local regulatory space. As you travel country after country, there is a very interesting evolution happening in terms of the local regulations. If you go to Indonesia, for example, the IDR billing for local business is mandatory. Hedging for foreign exchange exposure, mandatory. Contracts in Bahasa, mandatory. Go from Indonesia to China, the space is evolving extremely rapidly in terms of cross-border as well as capital control, foreign exchange controls. And a lot of these regulations are not necessarily crystal clear. They are not black and white. They are many times ambiguous. So you need a center of expertise to understand those regulations and making sure that the organization stays ahead of them. And the third domain is the international space that is evolving. Clearly, we spoke about the market volatility, but beyond that, if you look at the space, Basel III is coming very rapidly. Simple definition of Basel III means the deposits that you put in banking system, you'll be paid less. If you want to borrow from banking system, you have to pay more. If you want to sign derivative, it's going to be more expensive. So it's evolving very rapidly against the customer interest. Same thing BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, the taxation space, again evolving very rapidly. But if the treasury department of a company is not understanding this evolution and is not proactively taking steps, the competition is going to kill that company over a period of time. And that's the value across funding efficiency, understanding local regulations, and navigating through this global development is the space that Treasury Center occupies. It's a very critical space, and there are examples of real value that it provides. If we talk to Citi, our own customer, if we take a typical customer, 2 to 3 billion turnover, operating in 10 to 15 markets in Asia, this kind of companies, year after year, the treasury centers have released cash to the extent of 100 to 200 million every year. Imagine releasing 200 million from your operations every year at a 10% cost of capital. That's a tremendous efficiency that is delivered to the organization which then goes and funds the growth aspiration that the organization has. So that's the role the Treasury Center is playing. Now, how is it really evolving in Asia? There are two interesting aspects to discuss here. One, if you look at the history, bulk of the Treasury Centers that we discuss are regional Treasury Centers and global Treasury Centers. And the kind of companies which occupy that space tend to be the most sophisticated, most evolved, and the biggest companies, Fortune 500 companies. And they are 5 to 10% of the market that we see here in Asia. What about the remaining 90%? The remaining 90% is not sitting silent. Just because they cannot establish a regional treasury center for whatever reason, what they are doing is very interesting. What they are doing is establishing local treasury center in each and every country. If you look at our customer space, many of our customers are having 3, 4, 5, 10 legal entities in each of the countries, be it India, be it China, be it Korea, be it Indonesia. What they are doing is the same concept of funding efficiency, navigating regulation, tracking global development at a local level, and delivering that treasury efficiency in a country domain. So we are seeing a tremendous trend in terms of local treasury centers coming up in Asia. Just to speak of Citi experience, in a country like China alone, we helped more than 300 local treasury centers in the last 4 to 5 years alone. And it's the same story in India, same story in Indonesia, same story in Australia, across the board. So that's one very strong trend coming up. The second trend coming up very strongly is the treasury centers are going beyond the treasury space. The treasury space typically tends to be the rates, currencies, commodities. The treasuries are going beyond that space into the third party dealing of a corporation, be it the supply chain, be it the distribution chain, looking at the holistic cash conversion cycle model, and then trying to release cash out of the entire working capital domain. It could be by setting up different structures, it could be working with the commercial department, negotiating better contracts, or releasing cash from the trading system, or finding banking solutions to be able to meet that objective. So just to conclude, we are seeing a tremendous trend of local treasury centers coming up on one side, and the treasury center organization expanding rapidly to cover activities outside of the treasury domain, with the core objective of doing funding efficiency and making the enterprise more profitable.
Thank you, Sandeep. Mel, you know ASEAN really well. We're seeing a lot of interest from the clients in setting up treasury centers in ASEAN countries with the growth. What are some of the developments in those countries that we should be aware of?
Yes, Deb, that's a really good question about an area of focus that is growing very rapidly. ASEAN, in the last decade and a half, has seen tremendous growth in the various countries. I mean, it's a place of 600 million people, 2.5 trillion in GDP, attracting a lot of foreign direct investments into the countries. So to just take on what Sandeep mentioned about local treasury centers sprouting out in different countries, we're seeing the same kind of proliferation across ASEAN. It's driven by the fact that the ASEAN countries want to support the foreign direct investments that are coming in, the companies that are setting up their manufacturing, trading operations in each country, and having a need to manage that cash flow, manage the balances that are being built up in the countries. The most recent of this is in Thailand. Thailand has set up a new Treasury Center program to complement the trading center and the existing international HQ programs that they have to support the likes of the Japanese in the infotech industry as well as the automotive industries. We are going to see a proliferation of such treasury centers coming up. Malaysia already has its own treasury management center program, as well as a principal hub which they successfully launched to provide shared services support for companies and MNCs growing in Malaysia. Philippines has a regional operating HQ program, and that has been a great attraction for the business process outsourcing activity that companies have embarked on and have put their BPO operations in Manila. We're seeing these as opportunities that give our multinational clients a plethora of choices to set up their structures in this part of the world so that they can grow their business. They can choose to place their treasury centers depending on their needs in various locations, put their shared services in other locations, and business process outsourcing so that they can combine these constructs to provide value and efficiency as they grow in this part of the world. So we find this a very exciting space.
Thank you, Mel. And Anita, let me ask you about Singapore. So we know that Singapore today has the largest number of treasury centers here. Do you think Singapore can maintain its competitive edge with all the developments in the region?
That's a very good question as well. I think when it comes to choosing a location for treasury centers, a corporate have to have a couple of considerations, right? And the factors such as the ease of FX conversions, the ease of cross-border payments, I think the vibrancy of the capital markets activities, the types of banking solutions and offerings that are available to support the treasury centers, the availability of talent pool, right? Regulations and political stability, and definitely quantitative factors such as tax treaties and tax incentives. Right? Singapore already has 5,500 treasury centers located here, right? And with the recent announcement of the FTC enhanced scheme, the concessionary tax rates is being reduced to 8%, down from 10%. Right? So with all that, I believe that Singapore will continue to maintain their competitive edge given the strategic positions and the gateway to ASEAN.
You know, I agree. There's a tremendous amount of expertise, and especially the quality of the human resources here in Singapore as well has to be a very significant factor too.
That's right.
Yes. Let's see if our audience has any questions.
I have a
Yes.
question. What are the centralization initiatives other companies in Asia championing?
If it's okay with you, I'll take that question. Well, we're seeing numerous centralization initiatives that our companies are undertaking to help them achieve their strategic corporate objectives of increasing productivity, enhancing efficiency, and mitigating risk. So setting up treasury centers as well as in-house banks, procurement centers, netting centers are all examples of different centralization efforts underway across the region. Any other questions? Yes.
So my question is, how important is technology in developing a treasury center strategy?
Sandeep, how about you?
Yeah, sure. I think we all stay in a wired world. Technology has impacted our lives as we can look back, and it's changed for the positive. Exactly similarly, even in the treasury domain, technology plays a very, very important role. All the treasury objectives that we spoke about, whether it's funding efficiency, navigating regulation, navigating global developments, with the help of technology, they can be delivered better, faster, and cheaper. There are 2 or 3 things that we are observing in the market, if you really ask me. At one end of the market, we have sophisticated and scaled up companies who are operating tremendously scalable businesses, and those set of companies are using evolved technology platforms, evolved treasury management system platforms, be it SunGuard, be it Kyriba. There are a number of platforms available in the market, but they have gone to the extreme of implementing a standard platform across Asia Pacific, making sure that the integration of treasury platform is complete with the underlying ERP systems, with the shared services center, with the banking system, supplier systems, etc., etc. And by virtue of that, they have a treasury domain in which the transaction processing gets automated. They get the best-in-class access to the recent pricing as well as the market data. And by virtue of that, their ability to add value as a treasury center has gone a notch up. So that's one end of the market, which is sophisticated. Now, not all the companies in Asia are equally sophisticated or have scale sometimes. So at the other end of the market, since the companies are not scalable or the businesses are relatively smaller in size, they may not be able to afford at times a fully evolved treasury management system. So instead of that, they are exploring alternatives, and there are a number of alternatives that have come in the market. Few years back, technologies did not allow, it was not possible, but with the recent technologies, we are seeing those kind of options being extremely practical options now. Software as a service, ASP, all these kind of business models are offering light touch technology on treasury platforms, in which you don't have to have your own IT resources, your own hardware, your own system support people, and you can use somebody's application to achieve the same goal of managing the treasury efficiently. So across the spectrum of the Asian market, we are seeing technology playing a big role. And then behind the scene, it's even more interesting how big data is making those goals relatively easier to absorb. So over a period of time, as we transact treasury, as we make an efficient processing, data gets accumulated. And if that data can be translated into an actionable analytics, there is a lot of insight a company gets in order to improve the KPIs further. If you go one step ahead and benchmark your data, benchmark your practices vis-a-vis what's happening in your industry, vis-a-vis what's happening in Asia, and that's where banks like us play a role. We are sitting here in the Innovation Center for Citi, and one of the big capabilities that we offer to our customer is their ability to benchmark their treasury practices vis-a-vis their peers in the industry and the industry as a whole. Once you do that benchmarking, you can easily pinpoint areas of improvement, whether it's funding efficiency, return on capital, working capital cycle, cash conversion cycle, and that gives you a goal for next year so that you can do continuous sustainable improvement in your value delivery. So just to kind of summarize, technology is an absolutely fundamental tool to deliver treasury value, and it's bound to be like that for years to come.
Thank you, Sandeep. Well, we've learned a lot today, and it sounds like with all the technology developments, with the regulatory developments in Asia, and some of the new initiatives in Singapore, it sounds like this is the right time for our clients to be reviewing their centralization and treasury center options in the region. So I'd like to thank our panel and as well as our audience for participating today. And I encourage you to contact your Citi Treasury and Trade Solutions specialist to further discuss your needs in Asia. Thank you.